Gym employees, what's your best enhancer-induced rage/gym freakout story? There's this guy at the YMCA I lifted at in high school who was crazy as all hell. The first time I saw him stroll through the door, he held his arms out wide and announced, "The Terminator is here." This one time, he was using one bench, and I walked up to the one next to him, but there were plates on it. I turned and asked, "Is someone using this?" "I don't know, man," he said, "but screw them, they left, it's your bench now." So I did my bench presses. Yeah, I'd make him my gym partner ASAP, sure enough for a good spot. Story 2. I saw a guy get mad at his spotter for jumping in to help him when he was doing bench press to failure. He was screaming, "You ruined my whole set! You ruined my whole set!" The guy then walked over to the wall, put both hands on the wall, and just shrieked, like, "Ah!" Then stormed to the locker room. Everyone literally stopped what they were doing to watch all of this unfold. Story 3. I did work in a gym, but this is actually a story from when I was a member of a different gym. There was this dude that my friends and I called the Hero. He wore an American flag tank top, American flag shorts, white Converse, and an American flag bandana. Dude was the most patriotic person I've ever seen. The dude was pretty average in terms of strength, would usually do like 135 on bench in a 5x5 set. However, he touted himself as this incredible powerlifter and was always hitting on girls in the gym talking about his latest competition. Every rep, no matter the exercise, no matter the weight, he'd shout "toot" at the top of every rep. It was hilarious. You couldn't not laugh because it was so loud. The best part was he was actually like a super cool dude, always there for a spot and would give high fives to people once they finished their sets. He also never took off his weightlifting belt or wrist wraps. I miss that guy sometimes. Story 4. This guy was in the locker room and went to get a drink from the drinking fountain. He didn't notice that someone, my buddy, didn't turn the fountain's nozzle back after filling his water bottle, and this guy got his shoes wet because of it. So he starts on a tangent. "Oh, this is friggin' great. I was late for work, car had a flat tire, forgot my energy drink, had to skip lunch, and I ain't had a carb all day." He is now known as Carb Guy. Story 5. I worked at a gym as the manager of the child center. It wasn't an enhancer-induced rage, but I had to suspend a very pregnant woman's child for biting other children way too hard. She was angry and screamed at me, saying there was no proof except she didn't realize we kept records of previous incidents that she signed, and then complained to my boss telling her that I called her son a menace, except who says that anymore? The entire time, she was complaining her child was hitting her and also screaming. Yeah, she canceled her membership and no one was sad. Story 6. About a year ago, we had 2 guys that were bodybuilders that were always here training for an event that definitely seemed enhanced. About 2 weeks before the competition, the one guy was maxing out on biceps and injured the distal biceps tendon, and it was very obvious. He was so angry he got up and slammed the other weight to the floor, and the other guy had to hold him back as he destroyed a water station and jug and started punching a wall and otherwise just going on a freaking rampage. The other guy eventually rode him outside and calmed him down after 15 to 20 minutes. Story 7. I don't know if this counts, but a big dude, 259, 300 pounds, was going for a massive bench press. I didn't count how many plates, just know it was over 6 on each side. He was yelling all the way up to his max. Everyone is obviously looking at this point, then he goes for the final one and just craps himself on the bench. Doesn't finish the rep, needs 2 spotters, gets up and is so angry that he didn't finish, and that people were watching that he just yells, "What? What?" with crap running down his legs and just starting screaming as he goes back to the locker room, all the while walking through the whole gym. Damn, dude, it was smelly. Story 8. We had this one guy who was pretty legit crazy. All the employees got a pretty weird vibe from him when he signed up, and he had been kicked out from 3 other gyms in our town. Anyway, he never quite freaked out, but he did a lot of weird stuff. He screamed at people for talking for too long between their sets because it disturbed his zen. He complained to us and the staff that all women there distracted him from proper lifting because they wore too tight clothes and tried to get us to change that. He once screamed at me while I was working out because I didn't re-rack my weights when I went to refill my water bottle. Yet never once did he re-rack a single weight. Just by walking into the gym, you could tell that he had been there earlier. He got upset with one of our senior members who was a champion in senior natural bodybuilding at 78 years because he wasn't as big as he was being 27 and on enhancers. After a while, we had to suspend his membership because he messed with all the members so much that our regulars wanted to switch gyms. Kind of a schmuck. Great toning and symmetrical muscles though. Story 9. Oh, this story is perfect. So, this occurred at the Dartmouth gym back around 2013. I'm really hoping someone in this thread was also there. For context, there was a schmuck of a guy manager who would always come over and yell at you for slamming weights, even if you weren't actually slamming them. I know slamming weights is really annoying, so I'm not defending it, but you have to believe me that this guy had a hair trigger and loved to yell even when there really wasn't any weight dropping going on. Now, this is where the stars aligned. There was this undergrad on enhancers who I had seen before and knew he loved to drop weights. He was about 5'8", but all unnatural muscles. I knew the angry manager was at the front desk, so I thought, oh, this might get good. Sure enough, the guy starts doing cleans and dropping the weights about as loud as you can, and immediately the manager storms over, redder than a tomato and looking like he was about to burst. What followed was just unintelligible screaming from both of them, only about 1 inch from each other. Sort of like this, but angrier. It was so much fun to watch, the whole gym stopped to watch. The best part, though, and the whole reason I'm telling this story, was once the manager was going off to call security. I'm actually surprised they didn't fight since there was some shoving, which would have been funny since the manager looked about 30 years older than the guy on enhancers. The guy screamed this line. Yeah, I get how it is. The strongest guy at the gym is getting kicked out for being too freaking strong. Screw you, I'm leaving. He was completely serious and saying that too and stormed off. Aw man, I loved it. Story 10. This one guy in my gym looked like Michael Douglas and falling down, had an awesome 1,000-yard stare and always looked like he was insanely angry. Carried around an old alarm clock to time his lifts like an old analog clock with the bells on top. One day, gets angry at something, full-on jumps in the air and roundhouse kicks the paper towel dispenser off the wall in the middle of a crowded gym. He was subsequently asked to leave. While on the way out, he took out his anger on another paper towel dispenser by straight up ripping it off the wall, Roadhouse style. Story 11. Not necessarily my best one, but pretty good. I was overseeing one of my facilities when this happened. There's a class going on and this older gentleman starts walking through the middle of the classroom. The instructor politely tells the gentleman that there's a class going on, but if he needs something from the room, she'll be glad to get it for him. He flips out and starts calling her every name in the book. Magically, the general manager disappears around the same time, so I get involved. I walk over, I calmly tell the gentleman that there's no need for such language. At that point, he starts calling me every name in the book. I tell him his membership is now canceled, leave, or I'm calling the police. He then throws a hissy fit, starts jumping on the rowing machines like a child and knocking over the weight trees. Then he proceeds to pick up some of the Barbie bells and throw one at the instructor and then tries to swing one at me. The guy must have been close to 80, so it wasn't hard to dodge. At this point, a buddy of his comes over, grabs him, and takes him to the locker room so he don't call the cops, and then he leaves. Should have called the cops anyway, show him the security footage, and there's at least a charge of some kind, right? 80-year-old guy, wow. Story 12. Not an employee, but one time I was doing cardio, and in the cardio room there's a small weightlifting area with a power rack and some dumbbells. There's also a large strength gym in my gym. My university has a huge gym, with plenty of power racks and benches and weights, so I don't really understand why they put a power rack in the cardio room. So this guy comes in. He looks pretty stocky and very serious. He gets on the Olympic lifting/deadlift platform attached to the power rack and starts doing his 1-rep max, 225 pounds, for at least 30 minutes with short rests, all the while grunting and yelling and making a huge scene as if he's frickin' Arnold himself. During his rests, he flexes in the mirror and does bodybuilding poses. Keep in mind, this is the cardio room and he's grunting, and that's literally the only sound other than the pop music playing on the speakers. Even if he went to the strength gym, he would have looked like a fool though. Story 13. 24-hour fitness in the middle of the night. Every night, there was an older gentleman who we used to call Captain B. He was this bad who had done everything in his past life and was suffering through an autoimmune disease that was destroying the cartilage, especially in the spinal column, and apparently the way to slow down the process of deterioration was to exercise. This dude just loved to go around and mess with all the college students who would stare at themselves in the mirror and just do bicep curls all day. One day, he crap-talked the biggest dude in the entire gym I'd ever seen, 6'7" and beyond jacked, about how little he can lift. Dude lost it, so Captain challenged him to a dip competition for $100. I watched both of them do 80 straight dips until the enhancer guy started to falter, then he fell to the ground. Captain B stared him down and did 10 more dips, got off, and got his money. The guy looked destroyed, like his purpose in life was meaningless. He lost it and ran out of the gym. I want to say he cried, but I'll sadly never know. Story 14. I worked at the front desk at a gym and I always had a volunteer with me. My volunteer was a lovely 67-year-old man. It was time to close the gym and the volunteer would go around telling the members that we were closing in 15 minutes and to leave the floor now if they were taking a shower at the gym, so they would be out by closing. One guy on the machines refused to leave the floor even at the time of closing, so my volunteer told him he had to go now. The guy took issue with being told it was time to leave and started yelling at my senior volunteer. I heard the commotion and looked up to see the guy following my volunteer. They were both screaming at each other. The guy asked him if he wanted to take this outside. My volunteer yelled back that he would love to take this outside. Thankfully, the gym manager stepped in and split them up before anything happened and the guy left. You can bet that the young guy who took enhancers would have been regretting the decision to take it outside if they actually went out there, due to the fact that the unassuming little old guy was a former Marine who fought in Nam. Love that volunteer, one of the best friends I could ever ask for. Story 15. Not an employee. I was doing cardio on a stationary bike at night when this crap happened. This guy is presumably using the preacher curl machine upstairs and is yelling and screaming like he was giving birth to a child for every lift. No one could see him from downstairs. Somehow there was no one else upstairs, but everyone was aware of him. People started yelling and berating the guy to calm the heck down. Then an employee went up to set things straight. He gets upstairs, the clanging of weights and yelling stops, and the employee comes down the stairs looking confused. From some eavesdropping, the employee said there was no one upstairs when he went up. No one came down the stairs before he went up either. Gaines ghost lifting from the crypt has become a legend now. Story 16. I don't work at a gym, but this just might be the only platform I'll ever have to tell the story. I worked in a record store and a woman came in asking me if we had the Rocky soundtrack on CD. I went to the soundtrack section and found one used copy for $4.99. She grabbed it from my hands and got a look in her eyes as she said, "Thank God you have this. My husband uses Eye of the Tiger as his pump-up song when he lifts weights, but I got really mad at him yesterday for being an idiot, and I ripped his entire CD player system away from the wall and threw it out into the backyard. I didn't know that his Rocky CD was in there, and now it won't turn on to eject the CD. I'm so thankful you have this." That lady was kind of really awesome. Story 17. Late to the game, but a guy I knew from high school, pretty eccentric dude, showed up to the gym one day using a guest pass. He was wearing high-cut jean shorts, a headband, and had a giant pair of work boots. He proceeded to get on the treadmill, crank it up to 10 miles per hour, and start to sprint while yelling and clapping his hands. Now, mind you, the work boots were heavy-duty, and in conjunction with the 10-mile-per-hour setting, it was making the most horrifically loud banging noises you could possibly imagine. Naturally, everyone in the entire place stopped to see what the hell was happening. This went on for like 30 seconds until he could no longer maintain the 10-mile-per-hour setting, and he proceeded to get thrown off the treadmill, somersaulted backwards about 15 feet, until he cannonballed into the sheetrock. It was the most surreal goddamn thing I have ever seen. He got up off the ground, pumped his fist in the air, had the courtesy and wherewithal to turn off the treadmill, and then high-fived someone and walked out. I have not seen Jared since. That was like 10 years ago. Story 18. This happened 10 years ago when I was a personal trainer at a Gold's Gym in my hometown. We had an amateur bodybuilder annoy the entire gym with his grunting. From start to finish, the ordeal lasted around 2 to 3 hours. Eventually, his voice became hoarse, but it didn't stop him one bit. My manager asked him to tone it down or he'd cancel his membership. Dude flipped out. He went on a tirade of how much money he spent up to that point, both in monthly membership fees and buying shakes from the juice bar, and now he was responsible for bringing in the hardcore lifters crowd to the gym. The hardcore lifters had been coming there anyway, so that statement didn't hold much water. After a half hour or so, he announced to the gym he was leaving for good and that he'd be responsible for shutting down this gym one day. Nobody believed him. 2 years later, I had long since quit and he opened up a gym in his garage for personal training. Word got out that he and his wife were actually producing results with their clients, so more people sought his services. Another year later, they expanded to an old warehouse. It took off. He made good on his promise. The Gold's Gym took a major loss in membership and closed their doors for good last year. Story 19. This was not at a gym, but on a football field. I used to play in an amateur men's tackle league, Canadian football, so American football with weird rules and more beer. Anyway, my team was an expansion team and we didn't have a lot of great players, and like most high school/amateur teams, you often had to play several positions. Very rarely was someone just a wide receiver or just an offensive lineman. One of the players on our team played halfback, which in Canadian football is like a safety, and tight end. This guy was a pretty heavy enhancement user, but despite the substance use, he couldn't make it as a starter, so he was on the sidelines, slowly getting more and more worked up that the coach wouldn't let him into the game. Finally, somewhere in the middle of the third quarter, coach turns to him and says, "Hey, I need you to go on punt coverage." Well, he didn't like that very much, and he threw his helmet at the coach. Meanwhile, I, who played center on the O-line, was walking off the field, and I saw this guy about 40 yards away, walking to the middle of the field with no helmet on. All I said to himself was, "Why is he on the field with no helmet?" Then I realized he's screaming at the fans. He's screaming, "Screw you, screw this team, screw y'all," making all kinds of rude gestures. A ref tries to calm him down and he shoves the ref away. That's when a couple of our linemen had to wrangle him until security came and escorted him to the locker room. When he proceeded to punch the ever-loving crap out of the metal locker room door, we never knew what happened to him after that, but I hope he, his tiny Johnson, and his injured knuckles are in a better place. Story 20. Yeah, not an employee, nowhere near as ridiculous as some of these, but my gym has signs everywhere telling people to let other gym members work sets in if they're going to be using a machine for a while. And I was standing off to the side waiting for this guy to finish up on the one machine I needed to end my circuit. He had already done 5 to 7 sets on this machine when I asked if I could just get in to do one set to finish. He starts yelling at me, saying that I should just go use some other machine because he's not done yet, and how dare I ask him to use that machine because I obviously don't know what I'm doing. I had already done my circuit out of order while waiting for him to finish, and he was taking forever. Also, I've been lifting since I was 15 years old and currently train with a competitive bodybuilder. I think I know what I'm doing. Well, it looks like someone skipped ego lifting day and went straight for the ego shouting, eh? Story 21. So I used to work at a campus gym and a huge gym, like every type of activity, including a game room with Xbox, ping pong, and stuff like that. On the weekends, we had family hours where people could bring spouses and kids for free. It was the worst time to work. Anyway, at the time, I worked in our equipment center renting out equipment. It's Sunday morning at 10 a.m. I'm hungover as heck, just trying to stay awake. This lady comes up and asks to rent the ping pong paddles and ball. Well, we only lend out the paddles. The balls are $0.25 a piece in a gumball-like machine because little schmucks damage them like crazy. So I relay the message to the lady and she starts freaking out. Now, usually we keep a few extra balls laying around to give out to people who don't have $1 to break. But this lady is yelling at me about how I ruined their weekend and can't I just give her $0.25 and what kind of monster am I? Again, I'm hungover like crazy and just don't have the patience to deal with it. So I told her to find $1 or no ping pong and to come better prepared. Plus, I'm not rewarding that type of behavior. Screw you, lady. I make $8.50 an hour. You can't have my quarters either. I have a lot more, but that one stands out. Story 22. I knew this guy. He wore a yellow Hulkmania shirt, red spandex, leggings, and combat boots painted yellow. No, this isn't a joke about this guy secretly being Hulk Hogan. This guy was about 6'6", probably 350 pounds. He's not a little guy. Bald head and really thick glasses. So this guy comes in playing some kind of entrance music on a tiny boombox. This is at an Anytime Fitness at 1 a.m. and it's only me and 2 other guys there. He walks over to the free weights while talking to himself and pointing at himself in the mirror. He starts flexing. The 2 other guys walk away and go to the machines and I follow. This guy does this whole thing about eating vitamins and saying prayers and then goes crazy into the mirror. I'm laughing uncontrollably. My friends tell me to shut up, but I can't. It's hilarious. It's like a skit or something. They tell me that this guy shows up a couple of times a week and that's just what he does. Apparently, he's slow, but he's slowly lost weight over time so people don't say anything to him. Random guys have confronted him, but he starts crying and throwing stuff around so people just avoid him. And if you're enjoying the video as well, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 23. Not a gym employee, but saw an employee freak out, completely justified at another gym goer. So this trainer is working with a female client who is attractive and obviously new to weight training, uncomfortable with the movements. So the trainer steps away for a couple of minutes to grab a piece of equipment or something, and some gym bro walks up and starts flirting with her, and she's clearly uncomfortable but unsure how to handle it. Trainer comes back and gives him the screw off look and he leaves. A little bit later, they're doing an exercise and the girl is struggling on a rep. The gym bro, from a couple of benches down, calls out some words of encouragement. She finishes the rep and the trainee grabs the weights from her hands and drops them while storming over to the gym bro. He goes off on this guy. He worked out, but the trainer was a pretty big guy, so he towered over him and laid into him about how he needs to stick to his own workout and he's making his client uncomfortable and that he has no right to coach or train anyone in the gym because he doesn't have that relationship with the girl. The whole gym sees this guy get verbally destroyed and quickly leave the gym. Never saw him there again. Story 24. Me and my bud walking home after the bar. Pickup pulls up and Juice Monkey jumps out, walks up to all 300 pounds of us combined and asks in the most polite way, "Hey, guys, either of you want to scrap?" I calmly replied, "No." He apologized and left. The thing is, he was so nice about it, I genuinely felt bad that I wouldn't fight him. I think it would have been a really nice one-sided butt kicking. Story 25. Not an employee, but in January, I joined the gym that's full of these sorts of people. Just last week, the cops got called to break up a fight between 2 gym dudes. Anyway, my first night at the gym, I was teaching my sister some basic TRX exercises when I heard an ungodly shriek of rage come from this fool that apparently messed up his deadlift. He proceeded to slam the weights on the floor with yet another shriek of rage while yelling, damn it, that was for my freaking Instagram and I messed it up. The bro with a camera that was recording all of this said, do it again, bro, and focus, this is for Instagram. Crazy man proceeded to scream and slap himself in the forehead no less than 5 times while screaming and kicking over his water bottle. I couldn't believe that I witnessed a grown man having a bona fide temper tantrum at the gym because he screwed up a video for his Instagram account. Plenty of other comedy gold stories from that dude as well. He's 33, but makes sure to tell everyone in the gym that he's training for MLB tryouts. He hashtags all of his photos, #unsigned talent. Also, in one particularly memorable moment, he squatted, with poor form I might add, some ridiculous amount of weight. Once he was done, he proceeded to throw down the weights with a scream, literally rip his tank top off, and pace around the squat rack while near shouting, I need to cool down, I just need to cool down. I now go to the gym early in the morning or super late at night. It's the only crowd that seems to know how to behave themselves. Story 26. This one guy at our gym who actually used to work there had a very weird friendship with the other gym goers. He frequently talked to me and my friends about weird crap, but he seemed like a decent guy until he started yelling at some 15-year-old kid for not putting away the weights. Now, let me set this straight. It is annoying when weights are left on, but it was a leg press machine where it is a given to leave on at least a plate. The guy starts yelling at the kid, saying he will take away his membership and call his parents if he doesn't apologize to him, and then has to go around and justify himself to us and the other guys he talks to so he doesn't look crazy. Well, he got fired now for giving lessons to people for money when he wasn't supposed to. Story 27. Oh, I got one. I didn't work there, but I was there. Chest day, best day as usual. This freaking loofah of a gym guy. He was probably 30 more pounds than me, but I know he wasn't as strong without sounding arrogant. Dude has his little petite girlfriend there to spot him, like maybe 96 pounds. He's trying to max 315. Keep in mind, dude absolutely struggled to get 1 rep of 275. I'm good, let's go up. Like really loud and obnoxious for 0 reasons. Tries 315, hits his chest, and he gets like 3 inches up and is about to drop it because his form is atrocious. She saved his goddamn life. My buddy and I were literally walking towards the bench because we didn't know if this little woman could help. She helps get it up and rack it, and he just starts tearing into her. You ruined my whole set. I had it. Why did you touch the bar? Like literally screaming in her face. And we were like, dude, chill the hell out. You did not have it. The whole gym saw because you're over here screaming. He's just like, screw off, and left. She followed shortly after looking devastated and clearly embarrassed. Never saw either of them again. Hope she's okay. Frickin' schmuck, man. Nothing wrong with a little exertion, but this dude was not strong enough to be doing what he was. Straight ego if I've ever seen one. Story 28. At a gym I worked at, a guy would come in occasionally that worked at another branch of the gym. He wouldn't speak to anyone and would work out. He was a pretty big guy. He would wear big headphones and sing smooth R&B to himself while walking from station to station. Right before lifting, he would whisper, you can't lift anything, you freaking lightweight, over and over again to himself. This would go on for hours sometimes. It was amazing and kind of scary at the same time. Story 29. I'm not an employee, but there's this guy at my gym who I'm pretty sure most people are either scared of or just choose to ignore him. He'll walk around with his arms at his side, but they are crossed, so he just takes up a bunch of space when he walks. He'll also walk around with his chest all the way out and will scream at you if you even glance at him. Also, if there are people on a machine, he'll force his way in. He won't ask or anything like that. Once he sees you get up after a set, he'll move your stuff and claim the machine as his own. If you try to tell him you're still using it, he'll just say something like, you can jump in if you want. Another way he forces his way onto a machine is he'll see you on a machine you want and come and criticize you until you stop what you're doing just to tell him to shut up. Then he'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you needed some advice because you're doing it wrong. Another weird thing he does is he's always screaming. Even if he's just standing there waiting to do another set, he'll just randomly scream at the top of his lungs. When he wants to bench, he finds random people and screams at them until they spot him. He won't even ask, he'll just go up to you and scream at you. Story 30. Not a gym worker, but I went with my friend to the gym a couple of times. Now, this guy was kind of scrawny, and I saw him go up to his leg machine. You add on whatever amount of weights you want, you lay down at an angle on it, and push up with your legs. He literally adds as many of the heaviest weights as this thing can handle. I was just on an elliptical running for a bit, and I slowed down to watch this guy. I'm about 50 feet away. He gets on and positions himself and starts to push. I'm like, there's no way he can get that up. He then proceeds to push it up once. I can see everything is his calf. His muscles are bulging, and from that far away, I can see his veins bulging out too. He then just drops his legs completely, and instantly, it's supposed to be a slow release. The machine almost whacked him as the piece he pressed up came back down. He stumbled off and made it to the locker room, but I'm pretty sure he did some damage. Story 31. I'm probably too late for this freak show, but I have one back from high school. This kid on my football team always would lift before the game, and he had some pretty intense anger issues. For a high school kid, he lifted some great weights with little to no form. Well, we are in the middle of a football game, halftime, the coach is giving us the usual pep talk, and this dude starts lifting like he's insane. He couldn't get the weight right as the coach broke our ending huddle, so he proceeded to tear a water fountain off the wall and punch a firebox into pieces. Everyone just kinda ignored it. We ended up winning that game. Story 32. In college, there was this dude my friends and I dubbed Wigger Enhancers and alternatively rap battles. He was this obviously enhanced 20-something white dude who wore the most ghetto workout clothes and would spontaneously bust out in a very loud, very enthusiastic rap verse in between sets, even if he wasn't actually listening to any music at the time. He was normally a pretty chill, if weird dude, so it was understandably shocking when one day he blew up at this wiry 60-something guy who I later found out had simply asked how many more sets rap battles had. One moment, Wigger Enhancer was towering over this old guy and crowding his space like guys tend to do before a fight, and the next, rap battles was on the floor. Turns out that wiry old guy was a former Marine and was having none of rap battles nonsense. That was the last time me or my friends saw Wigger Enhancer. Story 33. A sweet college girl who invests in regular training used her guest access and brought in a meathead boyfriend to our high-class training studio and 24/7 gym that is 70% female. Dude is already sweating and wild-eyed, Lord knows what he just took. Time to show off. Bro puts 315 on the bar in a squat rack, no warm-up, and attempts to do just one rep. He does, but then ends up pinching his pinky under the bar when re-racking and lets out a bellowing "fuh" throughout the gym and comes up to the front desk for a band-aid. Then he adds another 90 pounds and attempts another single rep. He fails, drops the bar, letting out a deafening crash throughout the gym and a tirade of bad words. He stomps to the locker room and tears a locker, cheap particle board at the time, off its hinges and storms out, letting out one last, "This gym is BS." He was there a total of 5 minutes and got himself banned for his stupidity. 2. The only guy ever who takes classes left after routine participation in butts and guts. A few minutes later, he hurriedly limps back in through the front door and back into the gym. Weird. 5 minutes later, a member comes up and says there's actual crap on the floor outside the locker room. I investigate and find a trail leading through the men's locker room into a stall. Out comes our lone male class participant who says, "Sorry." I give him a trash bag and suggest poking holes in the corners and wearing MC Hammer pants. He grabs it and just wraps it around his waist and walks barefoot, clutching his messed up clothes in one hand, holding up his garbage bag kilt with the other to the amusement and shock of the other members, staff, and randoms in our plaza. He canceled his membership soon after. I assume he also changed his name and moved. Story 34. This happened at my local YMCA gym in Smalltown, Ohio, which is actually one of the biggest ones in the country. There was a regular at my gym that had that perfect military flat cut, mid-50s, and jacked. No way I would ever mess with this guy. However, a group of early high school kids ganged up a bit and were chirping at him while he was benching. He told them to screw off and quit being smart bums. Blame goes to the kids for running their mouth and trying to show off to each other. After he told the kids to screw off, they did, but also told their dad what happened. Naturally, their dad wants to defend his son, so goes into the gym to give the flat-top guy a piece of his mind. The only problem was dad was well out of shape and clearly didn't lift, nor did he have any business coming back into the gym. Next thing I know, the flat-top guy didn't even let dad finish his first sentence and just punched him. Unfortunately, the flat-top guy never returned, but this is definitely my favorite gym story. Story 35. Gym goer, not an employee, but I was working out with a girl, teaching her the ropes, and a lady on the Stairmaster had her phone on speaker, and she's screaming at her kid through the phone. So not really a gym freak out, but it was horribly uncomfortable, and everyone in the gym got real quiet. Also not a good impression when taking a girl to the gym for her first time, lol. Side comment, enhancer-induced rage doesn't actually exist. Enhancers merely improve already found traits in a person. So, super aggressive people on enhancers will become more aggressive, but a nice gym guy on enhancers stays a nice gym guy. Source, knows many people on enhancers. Story 36. I had a run with, I assume was a professor in college once at the campus gym. In between sets on an incline machine, I went to the water fountain and came back with the alleged professor using the machine. He did a set, stopped and rested, then proceeded to do another set, stopped and rested again. So I asked if I could work in, mind you, my stuff had been sitting right there, and he said no, he had a couple more sets. So keeping my cool, I grabbed my stuff and moved on. The following week, I'm in the middle of the same routine. Stop to get a drink and come back to find the same professor using the machine. He does a set and stops to rest, so I ask him if I can work in and he loses it. Says I did the same thing to him last week, so I lose it and say something along the lines of, "Listen, schmuck, I was on the machine first and gym courtesy says you let others work in. Plus there is a freaking sign here that says to share equipment between sets." I point to the sign right next to his head that says to share equipment between sets. He gets mad and storms off. I finish my workout and then it dawns on me. I hope I don't get that schmuck as a professor some semester. Fortunately, I never saw him again. Story 37. I worked in a boxing gym and the owner was a pro. Guy on enhancers was trying to bully members and he took it upon himself to put him in his place. Last round I ever saw the guy, owner, was shifting for 30 straight seconds and dipping under wide punches while lighting the kid up for every uppercut and hook you should take in your life. The kid took off his headgear, punched a wall, screamed, hit a heavy bag for 15 minutes and then left and never came back. It's too bad. I wanted to see if he could take a punch, but they wouldn't let me since he was 3 weight classes down. Story 38. I wasn't an employee, but I once walked into the gym at off hours and saw only one guy in the room. Went to a machine, saw a water bottle kind of off to the side, asked the dude if someone was using it. He said he didn't think so. Proceeded with my workout. Halfway through my second set, some dude walks in and zones in on me, storms over and picks up his water bottle. I stopped and asked if he was using the machine. He rolled his eyes all dramatically and said, obviously he was, and then said, this is why I hate having girls in my gym. Then he stormed over to another machine and used it as loudly as humanly possible. The other dude in the gym gave me a what the heck face and we both finished up super quick. Story 39. In high school, I stocked shelves at a grocery store with a guy who was a football player in university. He had just finished his last season of eligibility and was home for the summer. I guess he decided to take enhancers for a spin now that testing was no longer an issue and was full on every day, 3 hours a day in the gym. One day calls me right over before a massive deadlift and asks me to help him. When asked what he meant, he proceeds to encourage me to slap him in the face right before he attempts the lift. I decline many times out of fear for my life. He then gets even more aggressive and yells, "God damn it, Dr. Chadsworth, if you've ever had any anger towards me from work, I want you to take it out on me right now by slapping me as hard as you can." Being fired up by the adrenaline rush derived from a 300-pound gorilla screaming at me, I delivered a slap force that registered in the top 3 all-time in my then short life. What followed next was his face turning bright red and a lift grunt that exited him, sounding like He then dropped the weight, shaking the gym floor, cried out in victory, thanked me, and told me he'd see me later. Never questioned him again, never again. Story 40. I worked at a gym as a personal trainer for a couple of years. It was a huge, high-end gym in a nice area. I once saw a 16-year-old scrawny kid put 8 plates, 4 on each side, on a Smith machine for squats. I was training a client, so I wasn't paying attention to him until I heard a huge crash. The kid was on the ground, not under the bar, in front of the Smith machine. As a few of us went over to check on him, he stood up and limped frantically away. He didn't say a word, and I can only assume he left the gym completely out of embarrassment. When I looked at the machine, one of the weight-holding bars had bent downward in a way that rendered the machine useless. He broke a Smith machine. I've seen 3 or 4 people fall off treadmills too. It's always a teenager, usually a younger teenager with friends spectating. When you're in the cardio area and you hear the hum of a treadmill speeding up to 20 miles per hour, turn your head and watch. I don't know why, but kids will crank the speed way up and jump on, then fall off spectacularly after 4 seconds when they can't keep up. Story 41. Not an employee, but back in high school I was taking a weightlifting class as an elective. One day I was spotting for a buddy, changing the weights. On the bench next to us was a guy benching and he hadn't been using the clips to keep the weights in place. Either his form was bad or was just slightly too much for him because he kept leaning one way and the weights started to slide. Naturally, this meant the whole damn bar dipped towards us. The 45-pound weight slipped off the end and nearly crushed my foot. After the weight fell off one end, he got jerked over to the other side by the now imbalanced bar. I was kind of angry about this. His carelessness nearly got me injured. After he recovered from the tumble, I looked at him and said something along the lines of, "Your weights just now nearly crushed my goddamn foot. Use the freaking clips." The guy just blew up, started screaming and yelling, trying to tell me to fight him and things like that. Apparently, he felt I was challenging his pride or something. Story 42. I worked at a gym for a couple of years, but unfortunately, I did not witness the episode. So apparently, some guy was throwing down the dumbbells when he worked out with them, so an employee asked him not to do that. He completely ignored the employee and turned back to his workout. So he keeps on throwing down the weights, and the employee returns to confront him more directly, threatening to kick him out if the guy didn't acknowledge the employee. So the guy gets pretty upset and basically tells the employee to screw off. About 10 minutes later, the employee came back with security and paperwork to ban the guy from the gym. Guy throws a fit, starts yelling at the poor employee, and kicks a yoga ball. It hits some poor girl. That guy did not come back after that. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.